Happy Monday, everyone. It's HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. We took a couple of days off. We were so busy trying to track Arkansas's, portal activity, retention activity. We had some days we had multiple segments, and I don't think I went more than skipping a day. We went ahead and took the weekend off from doing one of these. So last time we were on Friday, not really a whole lot has changed in terms of what Arkansas is doing. We told you it was going to be time for patience, wait and see mode. That's been the case. It's interesting because I had planned, as I mentioned last week, one of the segments I did kind of mid to late last week when we knew things were going to slow down was looking at the retention and the high school signees, the international player who signed, and the two big men. And we went through kind of the minutes, the 10 deep, including Carter Knox, assuming at some point he comes back. So we went through all that, and I promised during that segment I was going to break it down by, kind of compartmentalize it, backcourt, front court, and take a deeper dive and a closer look at some things, which we're going to do today with the backcourt. And it's kind of fitting because today's been a busy backcourt news day in terms of guys we thought just a week ago, just barely a week ago, Arkansas would be involved with because we were told they would be. And then we had pump the brakes. Remember the pump the brakes, Chad Baker-Mazara. No, Arkansas is not interested. Same with Haggerty. Remember, I was told by the staff, don't look at those guys, don't look at Jameer Watkins for now. Was kind of how that was framed. And of course, we know Watkins is in the draft process. But today's been a guard news day with some of these names. Chad Baker-Mazara off the board. What's up, Kevin? Angel. Okay, Angel. Thanks for saying what's up. God, I feel brand new to this after being away from it for a couple of days. We've been doing some literal spring cleaning around here, by the way, in the 501 at the McPherson Casa. We got all kinds of appointments this week with folks coming out to the house doing different things. Today it was HVAC. Tomorrow some appliance stuff. Just want to tighten some things up. Then we're going to have some landscaping stuff a little later in the week. All stuff we'll talk about on here in due time when it plays out. Let's let that play out. But today it was guard talk day, so you got Chad Baker-Mazara off the board to none other than EPM, Eric Patrick Musselman, Southern Cal. They've added him. They've got, as you know, Rodney Rice, who we talked about on one of these segments before. We were, daydreaming about how Arkansas could attack the portal for three-point shooters and floor spacers and gravity on the perimeter to help open up those driving lanes, make things easier. So EPM's landed both of those guys now. Not to mention Elijah Arenas, who's gone through, we know, a really bad automobile accident in terms of being in an induced coma. I think they brought him out of that. But a player that's a 5-star that's in the works also for USC when you talk backcourt and wing. So if you're sitting there drooling as a Hog fan, when we go through what Arkansas is retaining, what they brought in the early period, we're really going to then know more about maybe what this backcourt looks like going into it, because we know what some of the trouble areas are. We've been talking about shooting forever. And so while there's some real feel-good stuff here, there's also some real concerns. But the Chad Baker-Mazara news, and then PJ Haggerty, the $4 million man who wants to be the lead guard, that was never going to work. Either one of those elements at Arkansas, who knows what he really gets. But he's also, he released his Final Four today. One of those is a potential to return to Memphis, the 6'3" guard, second team All-American, AAC Player of the Year, American Athletic Conference Player of the Year last year. He lists his top four. It's a return to Memphis is the bottom on that. But Ole Miss, we've heard a lot of traction with. We'll see where it goes. North Carolina State and Texas. So keep your eyes on that. Here's a player that, half of his Final Four are SEC teams. And so it's really interesting when you look at the two of the three big names we were talking about just a week ago, Haggerty and Chad Baker-Mazara. I did a whole segment on Chad Baker-Mazara as the guy who makes the most sense, trying to fit in a role with the retention and sign guys that you had that are coming in, and then all of that was nixed. And so now we're seeing some movement. I think to add insult to injury, if you're a portal watcher or you're thinking, well, Arkansas's not winning enough of the portal. They went and got two big men. Those were priorities. They're really good. It makes sense what they're doing. And you're saying, yeah, but where's the splash? Well, you got these two names out of there, and all of a sudden, On3 Sports is trying to make you feel less splashy about Darius Acuff Jr. and Malik Thomas, two top 10 rated 5-star guards we've talked about all year. On3 Sports, I guess, did its final update. They're the ones that have been the lowest when you look at ACUF stock among all of the other services, and Malik Thomas as well to some degree. But they put out their list of 14 five-star players, regardless of position, and neither ACUF or Malik Thomas appear on that. They're not favored very well, very highly in their overall rankings either. Whereas the other services, whether they have, like ACUF's fifth in 247 Sports, he's seventh in ESPN. I think Rivals did drop him to 13th. But regardless, a five-star across the board and a composite top 10 player, regardless of position. Malik Thomas has slipped a little bit in some of these services. He's still seventh on Rivals. We'll see if and when Rivals updates. But he's just outside the top 10 on a couple of other ones. But the point is, he's still rated as a five-star by everybody. So everybody rates these guys as five-star, top 10-ish players. In ACUF's case, at least two of the services have him hovering right there around top 5, and 247 Sports has him fifth. Yet neither one are 5 stars according to On3 Sports. I put a tweet out. It's almost as if these guys reclassed, or they took their talents to a parallel universe and are no longer, in the mix here. I mean, I don't get it. Something seems amiss there, and I respect the folks that do the work over there at On3 Sports, like I do at some of these other services. It's not that, but in the case of these two guys, I'm a little bit baffled that at least Darius Edcup Jr. Let's not forget the Naismith Trophy that recognizes the National Player of the Year. He was one of 5 finalists for that, and those 5 finalists were also, by the way, all 5 on the Naismith Trophy's first team All-American team for high school. And that wasn't one of those All-American teams that goes 8 or 9 players deep on the first team. It was a top 5. So ACUF was not only a finalist among 5 for the National Player of the Year, but he was one of 5 first-team All-Americans for that. So it's bizarre. You look at their postseason, they're 5 stars. Very rarely is it someone that's not a 5-star get invited to more than one of these postseason All-Star events. And in ACUF's case, he got all 3 of the big ones. Malik Thomas, 2 of the 3 big ones. Of course, that's McDonald's All-American Game, Nike Hoop Summit, and the Jordan Brand Classic. All right, we're almost 7.5 minutes in. I'm Kevin McPherson. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. So if you're not riled up by all of that, let's see where we can go with this backcourt. I think some of the positives, the first thing that stands out to me, so when I say backcourt, I'm talking 1, 2, and 3. So your lead guard, your combo guard, some will fit as that, your 2, and then your 3 spot. So your lead guard, 2 guard, and your wing. And some wings you can say, well, is he a small forward? They're kind of lumped together, but 1 through 3, Arkansas returns. When you look at it's 5 players, just like it was last year. Last year it was Boogie Flan, DJ Wagner, Nellie Davis, Carter Knox, and Billy Richmond III. You had 3 true freshmen, DJ Wagner coming off a freshman season, and a veteran player like Nellie Davis, who had Final Four experience, put up big numbers against high major competition, even though he had played in a mid-major, but a really good one, the American Athletic. So you're back to 5. All you did was you subbed out Boogie Flan and Nellie Davis, and you're bringing in Darius Edcup Jr. and Malik Thomas, the 2 names we mentioned, a 1 and a 2. You shipped out a 1 and a 2. You're bringing in a 1 and a 2. I think the difference here is when you look at that, you say, well, Malik Thomas is going to be a true freshman, albeit a very talented 6'4" guard. And then Nellie Davis, with all his experience at 6'4", you've lost that element. But Wagner's now going to be a 3rd-year player, whereas last year he was a 2nd-year guy, less proven. And then, of course, Carter Knox and Billy Richmond III, that was your depth really at the wing. They were both true freshmen. Now they're 2nd-year guys. So when you look at that top 5, that's your basically when you start talking about a top 8 or 9 rotation, which I don't think Calipari's going to stray from that. I think what he's doing is adding back end depth that's playable. But I think when you look at 1 through 3, those 5 are going to be the main minutes guys. We went through this when we went through the overall roster minutes the other day, and then I broke it down individually 1 through 10 because you got 10 on the roster right now. But now we're drilling it down to 5 for the backcourt through wing, and we're assuming Carter Knox for this practice, for this exercise, will be back with the team. So 60% of that group um, are guys that are retention pieces, right? And you've got two true freshmen in addition to that, but they're both 5 stars, top 10-ish rated 5 stars that are always planned to have significant roles. And so 60% of that's retention. I mentioned how you just basically went from 5 last year to 5 this year when you look at it from that standpoint, when you're talking 1 through 3. But I think the other thing is when we talk Wagner, Knox, and Billy Richmond III, with all of Arkansas's attrition problems last year, most of it was on the front line. Nelly Davis was struggling with injuries and still played I don't know if he missed a game. I don't recall if he actually missed a game, but he was definitely dealing with injuries. But DJ Wagner, Carter Knox, and Billy Richmond III, all 3 of those players played all 36 games. Each of them played all 36 games last year. So I don't want to jinx anything looking ahead, but it is part of the talking point here. You not only got getting back retention, important retention, and we knew they were in your top rotation last year. It's not like these were guys on the outside looking in who you're trying to develop, and now it's a crapshoot. What are you going to get? You know what you're getting, other than with each of these guys, you hope there's some improvement and not decline. So from that standpoint, you're not really sure how that translates just yet, but we're going to go through it. But I find it very interesting that those were your most reliable guys in terms of games played. And in case of each one of them, they all took their game to a better level in many regards that helped Arkansas win games enough to get to the NCAA tournament and then perform well in the NCAA tournament. So they were all key components to success. They're not just guys on a team that had success and now it's their turn. It's these are guys that kind of took their turn late in the year and were performing big. So we're going to go through some of that. So when you look at it from that standpoint, those are the positives, I think. When I look at Arkansas as a team last year shooting from 3, and the fact that the 60% retention and the 2 freshmen you're bringing in, only one of those players that you're bringing in shot better than 35% on a season last year, and that's Malik Thomas shooting at a high school level, on the overtime elite level, 38.2% on a high volume, 8.4 threes per game. We keep talking about those numbers. Even Carter Knox, who improved his percentage in the second half of the season, really improved it, didn't take a ton of threes. He ends up being a fairly low volume guy. And at the end of the day, when you look at the whole season in totality, you're at 35%. So there's not a lot of proof of concept that Arkansas is going to move the needle in the positive way. Nelly Davis, Boogie Fland, and on the front line, big Zvonimir Visic, Big Z, those were really your top 3-point shooters, and they're all gone. In theory, but the way that the season ended for guys like Carter Knox, and then looking at the front line with the Trevor in Brazil, those guys were really consistent and reliable shooting from 3 as the season moved along at the end. And so those are guys you're bringing back. So we're not talking front line today, but we are talking 3-point shooting. Arkansas 7 makes from 3 last year as a team, ranked 262nd in Division I. That's not going to get it. That's bottom third of college basketball. 21.5 attempts per game. Meh. 32.7% as a team that ranked 249th. So again, you're bottom third and worse. You're not even at the top of that bottom third. You're kind of a few rungs down from there in college basketball. So you're looking at this backcourt, you're saying, well, how do you get better there? Well, you're going to have to hope that Malik Thomas, even if it's not initially, that he's a guy that, maybe he's getting up 4 or 5 threes a game. We project him around 20 minutes per game. And then he gets to a point where he's somewhere between 37 to 40%. That's what your hope is. You're hoping like a guy like DJ Wagner, who's been basically a 30% career 3-point shooter in 2 years, won at Kentucky last season at Arkansas, can improve from 30%. Is there a path to getting to 33, 34? That's the hope. Darius Acuff Jr. looks like, just looking at him, going all the way through his high school season at IMG Academy. And then, when you looked at the All-Star circuit, which, yes, you have to take some of that with a grain of salt, but he did take a lot of shots. He doesn't look much better than what DJ looks in terms of percentage that he's bringing. and then trying to project it ahead. I went through some of the reasons why when we talked about him a little bit more, but we'll do all that again here. But let's start with the guys you're bringing back now and really drill it down. Wagner, I mentioned all 36 games, 34.6 minutes a game. I've got him in my projection for next year. If you could get him down to 31 minutes, maybe that's better for a team that's also trying to get minutes for Darius Acuff Jr. They're both lead guards, and I see Acuff as an all-league potential kind of guy. I can't rule that out for Wagner, but it's harder to see based on some of the things that played out last year. But if he was at 31 minutes, that's still my projection. He averaged 11.2 points per game. I see him as a guy that anywhere between 10 to 12 points a game is probably where it's going to settle. Maybe he can get around the 13 points. But he was so inefficient, shooting the ball. Not only is he a 30% free 3-point shooter. I was really surprised that the University of Arkansas, when they put out some of his stats, that he's improved as a 3-point shooter. Among that, the other day in one of their social media tweets, that he improved. He's improved as a 3-point shooter. Technically, that's true, but he went from low 29+% to 30+. I mean, basically a percentage better on when neither one of them are good. And this is the guy that's taken the second most threes on the team last year. So you got a low percentage on a guy that was your second highest volume guy. He was 41 of 35 from three, 135, excuse me, 41 from out of 135 attempts. So 30.4%. That was second most on the team behind Nelly Davis. So you've got a couple of things there. I think the other, when we talk problematic with DJ, he was a better than 2-to-1 assist to turnover guy as a freshman at Kentucky. 3.3 assists, only 1.5 turnovers. Last season at Arkansas, he did increase his assists from 3.3 to 3.6, but he jumped all the way up to 2.2 turnovers per game. So as a primary guard, that's not a good ratio. 3.6 assists, 2.2 turnovers. He's got to get better there. So you'd like to see some improvement 3-point shooting. You'd like to see improvement taking care of the basketball relative to his role as a facilitator. Now, he also, both seasons are almost mirror each other at Kentucky and Arkansas. His overall field goal shooting was just barely over 40%. Again, less than 41%. So part of that's the 3-point shooting, but when you subtract all that out, his 2-point field goal shooting is below 50%. And for a guy that's driving mostly to the basket and not taking deep or mid-range shots, he's got floaters and runners. He's got to get better there. He's got to get his, when we know he's a guy that'll smoke some layups and then he'll make some really tough ones going left and right. And he gets in those little grooves, but he doesn't stay consistent. So you want to see him. There's several things. I mean, his offensive efficiency is not very good when you look at it that way. But they list him at 6'4". I think he's 6'3". He's strong. I think he can be a plus defender. 195, 200, he's somewhere in there. And so there's definitely positives there. And if you remember some of Arkansas's best games, some of their best wins, games they had to have on the resume to even make postseason as a 14-loss, 8-10 SEC team, as good as that league was, he had some really big second halves, which goes again to, can he put together more consistent play and distribute that throughout a game? You want to see more of that from him. But again, the positives are there. This is a guy that when he moved off that off-ball spot with Flan in the lineup and Flan went out with injury, after Arkansas starts 0-5 in league play, he moves to the lead guard. It allowed Nelly to come to the 2, his natural position. It allowed Knox to be a mainstay at the 3 and getting back up from Billy Richmond III, both on the wing and then helping at the lead guard some. Things started to cook a little bit better for Arkansas. It's not a lot of people want to point at Flan. I just think it wasn't just one guy was better than the other. I think it helped other guys get more opportunities and play their more natural spots. I've said that a lot. But I think we're going to see Wagner, if he's around 31, let's say he's between 31 and 35 minutes, which is close to where he was last year, 34.6 minutes, somewhere in that range. He's definitely going to be on the ball a lot of that. He's going to be at the 1 some. They're going to be splitting duties there, he and Darius Acuff Jr. Speaking of retention, again, I go back to Carter Knox. This is the guy, if he comes back, everything was glorious with this guy when you look at the second half of the season, but especially coming down the stretch in postseason. But, I mean, 6'6", 220, And we saw the bully ball element that he added a la do Thero. And then Thero's out of the lineup the last 4 games of the regular season, missed both of the SEC tournament games, missed the first 2 rounds of the SEC of the NCAA tournament, and then came back and played 5 minutes off the bench in the Sweet 16 loss to Texas Tech. So Carter Knox was kind of your bully ball hero at that point. He kind of took the reins of that. 24 starts in the 36 games, 24 minutes a game. I've got him projected up to 30 this year. And I think most of that will be at the 3 spot. But I think we may see him on the court with Billy Richmond III and maybe one of those lead guards at times when Malik Thomas is not in the game. So you've got 2 wings out there. But without a lot of 3-point shooting in here, it just looks a little clunky. How are they going to work this out the way the roster is constructed now, not knowing what they might add to round out this roster? But Carter Knox, I mean, 8.3 points, 3.3 rebounds, 1 assist, 1.1 turnovers. You don't really worry about his assist to turnovers because he's not, an on-the-ball presence and a guy that you're running offense through. He was really an opportunistic scorer that figured out how to less is more in his shot creation, catch and shoot, maybe one dribble to a spot, or get a hard downhill drive because you've got advantage. You've got that size to work with. So he learned how to play within his strengths and what made the most sense. He ended up 35 of 100. Bam, right on the money. Easy math, 35% from 3. But I always talk about those last 18 games. He averaged 10.4 points. And a good part of that was he was 20 of 46 from 3 in those last 18 games. Not high volume, but 43.5% in the second half of the season. Really elevated him. You look at the postseason, let's go NCAA tournament. Let's just do that. 13.7 points in the big dance, 3 games, we know that. 2 wins, Kansas and then St. John's, and then you lost to Texas Tech. But 13.7 points, 5 rebounds, and 26.3 minutes. So his minutes went up. When you look at his season average of 24, he in the NCAA tournament he was playing even more, but he was 68.8% from the field. He was driving to the basket, got some in transition, but he was taking some mid-range shots. He was shooting threes. We know that. Not a ton, but 68.8% overall from the field. In those 3 games, he was 4 of 6 from 3. All of that was against against Texas Tech when he scored 20 points and made all 4 of his 3-point attempts. So it's not like he's hoisted up a bunch. Again, when you go back over the last 18 games, he only made 20. That's a little more than 1 make per game, and he only took 46 though. So highly efficient. Can he help you there in terms of higher volume and then still have a solid percentage? That's the question mark as he develops and brings the next quantity and quality to season 2, because I think he could be a go-to type of guy as he continues to learn and understand how to create his own shot. Maybe he can add more to that and be more than opportunistic and be a guy that's creating some for himself and maybe even others playing off of that. I look at the free throw shooting. I kept talking about how he's gotten into the bully ball aspect of it. He was an 80% free throw shooter on the season. In the NCAA tournament, that dipped down just slightly, 78.9%. So that's great, 79%. But on 6.3 free throw attempts per game in the NCAA tournament. He played 3 games. 6.3 free throw attempts per game. That feels like a Duke Thero kind of stuff. So not that he's going to now slide over and be your mainstay kind of at the 4 like Thero was, but the point is the way he's built and the way he's able to play a little bully ball brand of his own, you can envision some small ball lineups where he does slide over and play some small ball 4 for you. But I think primarily he's going to be a 3. All right. So, and you've got great depth at the 3 because your 2 guys that were your 3s last year are back. Billy Richmond III, 6'5". They list him at 6'5", 205. Feels like he plays taller than that. He's got great bounce, good length. Again, 36 games, 17.5 minutes. I've got him projected right now is at least moving up to at least 20 minutes per game. We'll see how it goes. 52.3% field goal shooter. We know most of that was getting to the rim. Some of it, a little mid-range, little midi pull-ups. He had knocked down some of those. 3 rebounds per game, which is really good relative to the minutes. 1.4 assists. We know he played on the ball some. 1.3 turnovers. So for a guy that you're going to hand the ball to some as a kind of a someone that's going to initiate some stuff from you, if he maintains some level of role in that, you'd like to see the assisted turnovers be a little better than that. Depends on how much, though, he's playing in that capacity. But you wanted him to get a little bit better taking care of the basketball. 41 of 56 from the free throw line last year, 73.2%. I think he got better for a stretch there as it got later in the season. And then he ended up making his only two 3-pointers on the year in the SEC tournament. He finished the season 2 of 16 from 3. So obviously you play 36 games. That's not his game. I don't know how much he can improve that, but 12.5%. This is obviously not someone you're looking at going, okay, he's going to help Arkansas from 3 last year. He shot so few that percentage didn't crush. It's not like, oh, well, if he'd have shot just, 30%, Arkansas would have been a much better 3-point shooting team. No, he didn't take enough attempts to change the numbers much if he'd have shot, a little bit better. If he'd have shot a little bit better, maybe he would have taken a few more. That's really not his game. But it's also troubling since it's not part of his game. And Arkansas needs to get better there. And you're looking at this backcourt, and now we've talked about the 3 returnees, but Darius Acuff Jr., I just mentioned it. This is not really a 3-point shooter. Yeah, Malik is, Malik's a guy, we'll see how it translates. That's the scary thing about projecting a guy like that is we don't know yet when he goes Malik and Acuff when they get to this level what all is going to translate. I feel confident enough about Acuff's overall game and his value as a lead guard, a guy that can play with pace, and a guy that can get to spots and get off shots. A good number that are uncontested. He shot 64% combined in the McDonald's All-American game, the Nike Hoop Summit, and even the Jordan Brand Classic. I'll even throw that in there. But he shot 64% inside the arc. And a lot of that's due to the fact that he picks and chooses well on when to get into his shots, getting to the basket, even at 6'2". And he's not a guy that's, he's a little sturdier than Boogie Fland. Boogie's a better 3-point shooter, even though toward the end of the year, once they got in SEC play in the end of the season, when he came back after missing 15 games with a thumb injury, it was almost, that wasn't part of his game at that point. He'll get back to that. Acuff, I don't see as that kind of 3-point shooting value. Malik Thomas, I do. And that's why you have to really hope, because you don't have an either or scenario right here. You only have one volume guy when you look at all these guys on the last body of work they did, and that's Malik Thomas. And he was efficient. 38.2% on that kind of volume is really good. But how does that translate? What is the learning curve there? Shot selection is a huge part of it. Carter Knox struggled with that. Now here's a guy that looks like will be where you weren't projecting Carter Knox as a volume 3-point shooter. You're projecting Malik will be, but at what point can you unleash him to do that? Where is the trust? How does he build up that trust in the June and summer limited work they do? And then when they start getting into full-fledged practice, and then when they go through their exhibition season, even then, until it's live bullets when it counts, even then, depends, you're going to play your share of cupcakes. You're not going to be able to fully judge everything necessarily until you get into league play. And so there's a lot of question marks the way it's constructed now. And we're talking backcourt as it looks now. But I see Acuff as a 30-minute guy. Malik, somehow you want to get him to 20 per game. And they bring different qualities. I think Malik Thomas's energy levels, he's got good bounce. Instinctually, some of the stuff I really like, and some of it are just bad habits. And I don't know, sometimes, there was a lot of those elements I compared to Nick Smith Jr. And so how soon can you iron out some of that and get them to understand less is more sometimes? Not with your energy. Don't confuse your energy and playing at a tempo that's preferred with rushing into things and poor decisions. Carter Knox, again, struggled with some of that shot chasing, not only shot selection, but the timing on shots, minimizing you took 3 dribbles, you only needed 1 to get to a spot. I mean, that kind of stuff, and there's a learning curve for freshmen. So again, these are things when we look at Acuff and Malik, but I think Acuff, again, has the potential to be an all SEC guy. I think Carter Knox obviously does. I think there's a chance if DJ Wagner cleans up the turnovers, improves a little bit as a three-point shooter, becomes more efficient. There's even a pathway for him to be a back end, depends on Arkansas season, a back end all league kind of guy, maybe all defense, something like that. I don't rule it out. I'd say the ones that stand out the most to me out of these five as kind of flashing to me coming into it, maybe the best potential to do it are Carter Knox and Darius Acuff Jr. I can't rule out if Malik Thomas is playing off the bench because you got Acuff starting games at the one and DJ, they're splitting, sharing some of that duty. They're on the court together to start games. We'll see how the rotations work after that and how the minutes are dispersed exactly. But Malik, if you're bringing him off the bench, there and Billy Richmond also maintains that role based on how this looks, and those guys are getting 20 minutes. There's or let's say 20 to 24 based on performance, and maybe other guys not performing as well in that group. There's a pathway for maybe one of those guys to be sixth man of the year. Billy Richmond third, maybe on that all defensive team. Maybe Malik Thomas gets all freshmen coming off the bench and isn't six. I'm saying there's all league potential in all five, one way or another. That's what happens when you recruit McDonald's All-Americans. Let's not forget DJ Wagner was a top 10 rated McDonald's All-American. Malik Thomas, Darius Acuff Jr., both the same. Carter Knox, a McDonald's All-American, a guy that there's nobody really questioning that he might be Arkansas's most important retention piece, and a guy that's, the way he was finishing the season, I just went through it, eyeballing all league kind of status, and one of those guys that might be a preseason all SEC team pick. That's what you're looking at. So there's all league potential in each one of those guys. So that's the good news. When you get that 360 degree, 30,000 feet look at it, 30,000 foot look down at it, the 3-point, I go back to it. I just don't see enough here to believe Arkansas is going to move that needle, and they need to get better. You look at the Final Four teams, Elite Eight teams, those teams shoot well, much better than Arkansas did, and at a higher volume of makes. You'd like to get your makes from 7 to somewhere around 9. And you don't want to do that at the expense of then saying, okay, well, you shoot 32.7%. Did you chuck enough up there to get to 9 makes and you don't have the guys that can do it efficiently, and now you're still in that same percentage or even worse? No, you want to get to 9 makes and at minimum, get your nose above 34% from 3. You'd love to be around 35, but how do you do that with this? Now, we haven't even talked about the back end depth here. Isaiah Seeley, I think he's probably projected as wing depth, so the third wing behind Carter Knox and Billy Richmond the third. He's a guy that on the high school level could play at the 1 and 2 some. He's got to get stronger. He's got to do there's got to be a better maturity to his decision making with the ball. When I watch him, he's a great teammate. He'll be a complimentary piece, but there's still a learning curve even for him on top of needing to get stronger. So I don't know how much they'll trust him with the ball in any minutes that he gets. But I think so. I look at him initially as 3 depth, and I don't see him in the rotation. I don't have a minutes projection for him other than if you have any attrition, he might be a guy that plays a few minutes. Or if you have foul trouble and, whatever, there might be a minute or here or there that they give him just to get through a half or a stretch of a game. But I see him as emergency depth right now. And none of those guys you had outside the top 9 last year were emergency depth. They really weren't. They just weren't playable. Arkansas got down to a 7 rotation, and some of those guys were in foul trouble. They just didn't have, unless a Jaden Carroll-Letwood checked in with, 4 seconds left on a shot clock, and you didn't need somebody to pick up their 3rd or 4th foul, and you're down to 7. That might have happened once. But in general, Arkansas did not have answers outside those top 9. I think this plan was to get a little bit better quality of player on that in that playable back end depth, and they don't necessarily figure into your game-to-game rotation plan, but they'll get minutes somewhere based on need. And so I see Seeley that way. So that last year where you had a 5 deep in the rotation on the 1 through 3, you've got the same this year, but you've got a backup in Seeley there. Kareem Artal at 6'7", he's not 6'9". Based on Arkansas's front line, which we're going to talk about tomorrow, is probably 3-4 small ball 4 help at the 4 spot, more so than another depth piece at the wing. But I wouldn't even rule out seeing him on the floor as a wing at some point. And again, I see him as another, maybe the more likely of the two to see more minutes or help somewhere because you're still thin at the front line. We don't know how this roster is going to be finished. So for now, just looking at it, he's probably a guy you'd project to see more of the court because Arkansas is pretty jammed up in the backcourt. Sealy's not necessarily a guy that's going to improve your three-point shooting. I'm not saying he couldn't, but I don't even have a path for him on the floor right now. So I can't interject that as something that will help you there. If I saw a meaningful role for him right now where we're at, then that might be a different conversation. All right, 35 minutes in, I'm going to wrap up. I wanted to dive deep today. I've been keeping these segments a little shorter, but I did want to dive deep on the backcourt and really focus on some of this stuff. I'm just pulling out some of the things that were concerning, but also some of the positives. I think with Wagner and Knox, you've got some physicality and toughness in the backcourt. Billy Richmond III, maybe not the most physical guy, but he's a tough dude, and he's not afraid to be contacted. He attacks the rim viciously. He takes on everybody. He's not backing down. So there's a real element of toughness here. I think Darius Acuff Jr. is a tough cookie. I think Malik Thomas is an alpha who has a lot of belief in himself, and I believe a lot of that can be both good and bad on that learning curve. So there's a lot of elements here when I look at it that I really, really like. I just don't like what this looks like in addressing three-point shooting. That's the one thing that I see here. I think the only other real question mark is, how does DJ Wagner perform put back in a role where he's sharing that lead guard duty with a highly rated freshman coming in, and it didn't work all that well with Boogie Fland? I got questions about that. And then I've also got, again, questions about ball security with Wagner because he's going to play a ton of minutes. He's got to do a better job of taking care of that ball. He needs to improve that finishing rate, getting to the basket. He's your most experienced backcourt player. Last year it was Nelly Davis. In this group, it's DJ Wagner. He's that guy. So the elements aren't exactly the same, but I do like the retention. I don't like the question marks with three-point shooting the most, and then some questions about ball security and how difficult is this learning curve for guys like Acuff and Malik Thomas. So there's definitely question marks there, and there's also some really good stuff when you look at it that way. And then Sealy and Artal, it's just from this vantage point, there's just not a lot to say right now. I don't have a projected path for them. All right, let's talk about the way too early polls that have come out. I've been watching this, and there's this idea because Arkansas has made its recent retention announcement, and because I brought to you guys on Friday, the last time I was on, what the NBA draft connected professionals are saying, they're not even offering a range on Carter Knox getting drafted. They're saying this dude's coming back the way they see it right now. So let's assume that's true. Let's assume also that these way too early polls believe Carter Knox is coming back. That's why you see the field of 68 and Jeff Goodman, of all people, having Arkansas in the way too early poll ranked 8th. How about Jeff Brazello at ESPN at 9? Arkansas's at 9 in his way too early. How about John Rothstein in CBS Sports having Arkansas at 10th? There may be a couple other ones that have Arkansas a little further down, but in the top 20. And so for everybody clamoring for that big addition, that big splash, well, you kind of got that in Malik Ewing. It doesn't feel that way, in a sense, but he might just very well be an all-league kind of guy himself on the front line. Again, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. But when you look at these way too early polls, they're taking into consideration what Arkansas has right now, that 10, including Knox. They're not saying, okay, we're projecting 8, 9, and 10 because we believe Calipari's going to add some kind of a star-level player here at the end. It's based on what they see right now. It's what they got right now, right? So don't forget that. It's why when I go back and we talk backcourt today, think about that. It's not just me being a biased homer here, if you think that, going through some of that. These national guys are looking at it and go, man, Arkansas got a good unit. They got a good 1 through 10, and they really are they're not looking at Sealy and Artel when they're looking at those rankings. So they're top 8. The top 8 there are serious rotation guys. 3 of those obviously won't be starters. Some of that's on the front line. But they're really respecting what Arkansas and Calipari have done right now. Again, when you really drill it down, you're saying, where's the three-point shooting? I think Arkansas did address physicality. Most of that, again, is on the front line, at least in one player so far. Again, we'll talk about that tomorrow. But I think it's a good look, and I think it should give you, some energy in this offseason where you feel like, man, this portal stuff, seeing all these players come off the board, Arkansas has the luxury of retaining. They're the envy of so many programs that don't have the kind of retention you do. That we can't say that that's important and then act like these guys are just, afterthoughts, and you'd rather have someone better, because that's what happens if you start adding some of these higher level guys. You're taking away from, there's only so many minutes and there's only so many ways to faction those roles. And if you think some of these are your top role guys, not role players, but your go-to kind of guys, the guys that are going to do your heavy lifting, you're kind of talking out of both sides of your mouth if you're bringing in monster star level guys. But that doesn't mean that Arkansas won't add one more splash guy and figure it out. Because with this 10, let's not forget, they were holding out for Nate Ahmed, a top 5 rated 5-star, projected to be potentially, certainly a lottery pick in a year's time. We'll see. He's got to get stronger. But they were holding out hope to get him along with this 10. And they were also trying to retain a Duthero, which is a position of need when you start looking at the depth on the 4 and 5 spot, and that 3-4 role that he had, and mostly playing at the 4. They were trying to retain him. So this idea that Arkansas is going to add at least one more piece, I think 2 is not out of the realm of reality, but probably one more. And it could just very well be a depth piece. And I think based on what we just went through, as much as they need shooting, they're thin again on that front line. I think they need one more guy, because I don't count Artal, even though he might get a few minutes, as a small ball 3-4. He's not physical. He's not, if you look at him statistically, not a big rebounder. He is an older guy, but there's more of a finesse slash, but use quickness. They may need one more piece on the front line. So if they only add one more, it's either maybe a semi-splashy guy, or just a depth piece that fits in as a complement to Brazil and maybe could help at the 5 in a pinch, so that you're not, in a situation where you were last year when AD was hurt for so much, and even at times Big Z, where you're not down to just one true 5. Because even though Brazil gives you some depth there, he's not physical. He plays better against physicality, so maybe there's a thought, but again, we may be looking at frontline depth coming. If it's a backcourt piece, based on what I just said, you are hoping it's someone that can help you with your 3-point shooting. And then you got to figure out, how do we get that guy a big enough role to really impact that and really help shape what we are as a team? Because when I look at some of the negatives, I went through 3-point shooting, I went through ball security. But here's another thing, just looking at it from a practical standpoint offensively. If you don't have floor spacers and guys that can create some defensive, some gravity on the defense, and a draw defender that has to stay somewhat attached, it makes it a lot easier for defenses to scheme against you and use heavy gap help on your slashers. Arkansas's got a bunch of drivers and slashers. Wagner's game is driving and slashing, getting closer to the basket. Acuff, that's a big part of his game. Malik Thomas, even though he can shoot threes and takes a volume, he is a shot creator off the bounce. He's not as much so far a catch and shoot kind of spot up guy. He's been a shot creator and someone that's a high usage guy with the ball in his hands, even as a 2. Carter Knox is the one guy that's displayed a mature understanding of that as his freshman season went along, but you're hoping to get more from him. And he's a slasher. He's a bully ball guy. We just said it. Billy Richmond III is a slasher. He's not a shooter. So where's your floor spacer to prevent teams from having guys just sag off and gap help all the time, because they don't care if they leave someone open on the perimeter? Because if you make that pass out, the percentages are good that they did their job, the right job. They took away the right thing, and they'll live with a guy having a little bit more space to shoot a 3. In your 2-man game, Arkansas's big men, with all the problems Big Z had staying on the court at the end of the year because of some of his problems, one of the positives when he was in the game is the screen game. He could pass. Well, Malik Ewan can do that. We're going to talk front line tomorrow. But none of the big men Arkansas brought in can shoot. The only one that can is Trevor Brazil. So that's even more of a thing to say, well, then if you're not even getting more help there that we can see just yet on the front line, and we just went through some of those problems on the backcourt, when you're running that dribble handoff game or the screen game, whether you've got shallow rolls or a pop or a hard roll, whatever sets you want to run, when you don't have a threat that scares anybody shooting from 3, it makes it harder for some of that stuff to function like you want it to. It's not that Arkansas is just doomed. That's not the point. The point is the 3-point shooting not only helps you because you want to be threes add up to more than two, but you've got a lot of get to the basket talent here. And the best way to help that talent is to at least have a competent threat, more than one, from distance. Now, maybe it's Malik Thomas and the combination of him and Carter Knox and Trevor Brazil, the way they finished the season in doing that. But these way too early polls probably aren't taking into account drilling down on all of it. They're looking at the talent level. They're looking at what some of these guys have done. They're looking at the fact that Arkansas got to a Sweet 16, nearly an Elite Eight, and they've got one of the most envious retention plans in the country based on who's coming back. I mean, I've heard it said that Arkansas's got the best retention in the SEC. Well, that was the best conference in the country last year by a lot. And it may not be as good as it was last year, but it's probably going to be the best conference again. And now you've got the best retention out of that. Now, we can go back and forth and argue maybe it's not Arkansas, somebody else once the dust settles. But right now, that's a pretty nice place to be. And the way too early polls are seeing that, that's great. All right, we're going to wrap up here. I'm 46 minutes in. We're going to keep it under 50 today. J.J. Andrews, class of 2026, in-state kid, 6'6" wing, Little Rock Christian Academy. A couple of things I think are interesting. We know his decision date's coming up, May 15th. So that's right now, right? A couple of weeks, a little more than 2 weeks out. I think it's 2 weeks from, well, is it the 15th? So that's not too far away, a little over 2 weeks. But it's down to Arkansas, LSU, and Mizzou. I keep saying NIL and playing opportunity promises as a freshman being equal or close. Arkansas's clearly the leader here. If there's some promise with NIL and some role that Arkansas is not willing to do because of remember, they have ranges and they're not going to go over that, then that could be a game changer. Right now, not knowing anything specifically on something like that, only the track record of some of these other situations in the past, and with what LSU's doing, throwing around NIL money right now, I'm not at a place where I'm going to say, okay, I'm crystal balling him to Arkansas. But at the same time, I do think Arkansas is the leader, barring something like I just mentioned. So that's where I'm still at with it. If I get another feeling on, or get more information on that, and it changes my feeling on it, we'll talk about it when I come back on here. But a couple of things. Brad Bill Elite released its roster last week, and you saw J.J. Andrews on it. So it eliminates this idea when you see that maybe he's going to shut it down and not go through spring and summer because he's making a decision really when the season's getting started here, May 15th. It's the day before. That's on a Thursday. And it's the day before the first live evaluation period where college coaches can go out. And he's on the Nike EYBL circuit. And that's on a Thursday when he makes his commitment announcement. And then that weekend is the first live eval session. So the next day through Sunday. And so you're wondering, he's making that decision. Is he going to really be on the circuit? Got nothing to prove. Well, he is. Not only was he on the roster that Brad Bill Elite 17U put out, but the first Nike session, now this was not a live eval session. It was played this past weekend. A lot of grassroots basketball around the country. But EYBL had its first session where they're playing pool play and it all builds up and the record leads up through these sessions to the final. When you get to Peach Jam, only the best group of teams will make that and play for the Nike EYBL championship. But this is Andrew's first year at the 17U level, which is the EYBL is the standard and the 17U level is obviously the best of the best. You'll see players that are younger than their age group play up. He has not done that. A lot of players choose not to. He helped Brad Bill Elite win the 16U, the Nike E16 Peach Jam, the championship last summer. Big part of that. Arguably the best player in the final stretch of games. He and Mika Muridan ended up getting the MVP of it, but they were both really, really good down the stretch. But this first weekend, session one, Andrews played, and I saw results from 3 games, but 20 points per game, shot over nearly 71% from the field overall. He's a big-time slasher, get to the basket guy, just a blue-collar work. He's a 50-50 ball hero, one of those guys that, ESPN ranks him 22nd in the country. He's going to have a shot at being a McDonald's All-American. But 71% from the field on a low volume of 3, shot 50%. So you like to see that in the attempts that he took. 3 Nike East EYBL 17U games. I think his team won all 3. Got off to a great start. So he's out of the gates fast, showing really well. So just an update there. There's some other players Arkansas is recruiting. obviously that are going to be playing in grassroots for 2026. You're always keeping your eyes open for reclass possibilities like Mika Murnin, who we recently talked a lot about in a segment. It's heating back up this talk that he might reclass, 5-star, 6'10". But when Brad Bill Elite um, put out that roster for their 17U team, Mika Murnin was not on it. And when I came on and gave you guys intel the other day, part of it was it's heating up that he's going to reclass, but one of the sources, and I went through step by step each one, was that maybe he wasn't going to play spring and summer. So I don't know if he's going to flip teams. I don't know if if he's going to get around to doing that. I haven't seen it, but he wasn't on the roster that was put out, and I didn't see any stats for him in session 1. So we'll see if he's truly shutting it down, and is that part of a move to reclass. I'm going to talk more about Mika Murnin tomorrow when I do go through the big man part of it. All right, I said I was going to keep it under 50. I lied. 51 minutes. The only thing I left out going through the backcourt is what could Arkansas add now? Because of the logjam and the expected minutes and roles for these guys, I mean, if you did add, I think it's probably going to be more of a frontline-ish or 3-4 kind of a piece player. But if you did add it to backcourt, you got to figure out the minutes. And is it an international player? Is it someone out of the portal? I'd be surprised if it's a high school player, because you're already relying on 2 high school guys at the 1 and 2, and when you look at the 3 players are going to play the 1 and the 2, Acuff, DJ as a combo, and then Malik Thomas. We'll see how much Carter Knox helps at the 2. Would you add a third high school player to that 1-2 mix? I don't know. I mean, that seems like a stretch, and most of the quality ones are gone. If you add backcourt shooting, I don't know where the minutes are going to be there for it to impact. All right, we are signing off. 52 minutes in. I'm Kevin McPherson. This has been HogvilleNET YouTube Live. Thank you for joining me. If anything breaks, I'll be back on until tomorrow, where we will talk frontline. Oh, thank you, Arkansas Andy. You the man. Until tomorrow, thanks for being here. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you then.